going now. So you've been warned. All right, we've got the stream going. I don't think I'll run Mixler again, but I want to get that going at some point.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I love how I've been warned.
Right.
You've been warned too, okay?
Yeah. No, fair enough. Fair enough. People can watch us now, so everybody, simmer down now. Should have bought a Honda.
Oh,
all right.
Is this not chat roulette?
Right. It's Mad Libs with inappropriate conversation. All right. Here we go. All right. Going to start the recording. Everything's going. Hello, Twitch. Boy, you've missed a show already, and you always will. So here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming up on this edition of PK and Perry, the college football playoff is set. We'll talk about the top 4 teams that got in this year with some surprises to us. Also, Johnny Football, the most hyped backup quarterback since Tim Tebow, is finally going to get a start. We'll see what we all think of that. Heisman and maybe some NFL talk in there and more. Coming up on this edition of PK and Perry. Welcome into the 11th edition of the PK and Perry Show. Patrick and Tyler here with you, and we continue our inevitable march to Christmas. I will start shopping at some point, I'm sure.
Me too.
Yeah, right.
Not yet, though.
There's only 12 days, 11, 12, 13 days until Christmas here on this December 12th, 2014. Glad to have you along as we have another show for you, and this one it's going to be a fun one, as is all the others. We talk about the college football playoffs. That's where we'll get started, and it's where we actually spent quite a bit of our time over the last couple of weeks, but it's really been kind of the most interesting story, I think, in most of sports. There's other ones out there, of course, but this is one we're going to stick with for right now. Of course, the college football playoff, much maligned, much talked about over the last week. We had our ideas on who would get in or who wouldn't get in. In the end, it turned out to be Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, and the Ohio State University getting in at the top 4 spots. And there's been a ton of debate about that ever since really Ohio State leapfrogged, in essence, TCU to make it into the playoff. TCU won their game, and we talked about last week they did not really have an opponent worth mentioning, really, to be honest, was Iowa State, who hadn't won a game in the Big 12 yet. They got dropped 3 spots. Florida State bumped up 1 with their another come-from-behind victory over Georgia Tech to win the ACC. Oregon and Alabama looked amazing. They took care of business. And, of course, Ohio State with a Roman triumph over Wisconsin, 59-0. Wisconsin's changed coaches since then. It's just been, kind of an amazing week for Ohio State after coming off quite a bit of tragedy. And, of course, I'm excited the Buckeyes were able to get in there. But, what do you think? Did not so much focusing on Ohio State, but just the top 4 teams, how do you feel about the guys that have gotten in?
I think everybody agrees with the top 3. That 4th slot, man, I was surprised that Ohio State got in. I actually was in a Facebook conversation, which those are never good.
Right.
Like social media conversations are never great when you're debating things. But I told somebody, I was like, there's no chance that Ohio State gets in because they have the worst loss. They lost to Virginia Tech by 2 touchdowns at home.
Right.
They're on their 3rd string quarterback. And I get that was seen as a plus by the committee. Oh, they're a complete team because look what they did with their 3rd string. I say as a negative, like that's their 3rd string quarterback going to start for them. So that was me. I was shocked, like absolutely shocked that Ohio State got in. I thought TCU should have been in or Baylor. I I don't know how you put TCU in over Baylor since Baylor beat TCU, but TCU only lost by a touchdown on the road at Baylor. So I was shocked that Ohio State got in. I could not believe it. We were in the green room on Sunday morning, and we're talking about it, and we come back from lunch, and I open up my phone just to see, and I saw Ohio State sitting there at 4, and I was like, that doesn't even make sense to me. But I mean, I get it. 59-0 over Wisconsin is pretty unbelievable,
right?
In a championship game. Now, I think we talked about this before the show. I do think that Wisconsin gave up in the second quarter, and Urban Meyer knew what he needed to do, which was put buckets of points on the board. So I don't know. I mean, it's the first 3 I'm definitely cool with, and I'm just very leery of an Ohio State team in a big spot. So.
Right. Yeah, well, that's kind of well documented on your part because you really have no faith in Ohio State in a big game. Now, not that that's been unfounded over, say, the last 7 or 8 years, because they've had 2 national championship bids in 06 and 07. They lost both of them. Really, Ohio State on a really big stage as far as a national title game, you have to go back to 2002, and in that game, it was considered a long shot. In fact, I would make a lot of comparisons of the 02 Buckeyes to this year's Florida State team, where by the time you got to the national title situation, anybody looked better than Ohio State back in 02. And I think you have that with Florida State this year. Anybody looks better than Florida State. And it was one of those where you had people considering, I think for a minute, well, does Florida State get bounced in favor of even an Ohio State team that won convincingly in their championship game, and TCU, which, I mean, they rolled Iowa State, regardless of they're slightly better than our sister of the poor or whatever you think.
Right.
But there was that, well, yeah, but they're undefeated and they've won 29 games in a row. And I mean, you'd have no legitimacy as a college football playoff system if you bump the defending national champ who hasn't lost a game yet, even though they've all been ugly, if you bump them out of that top 4 spot.
Yeah. I think that Florida State's my pick to win it all. I think if you watch Florida State this last year, everybody thinks they suck and they've been awful. I think they haven't turned it on until they need to.
Right.
Like that's what I feel like. I feel like, oh, we're down a touchdown, 4 minutes. Okay, let's start playing football. Like that's
right.
That's how it feels to me. They haven't lost a game in over 2 years, and they still have Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
Alabama's the only team I think that can take them, and I don't even think Alabama will take them. I think Florida State will win it. I think they'll win the national championship game again this year, and I hope they do because I want that to happen. I want to see everybody who thought they shouldn't even been in the playoff, and that was ridiculous to me. They haven't lost a game in over 2 years, and you're going to talk about bumping them out? Like, right. Sorry. I can't wait, and I hope if they win at all, I mean that'd be incredible. Well. And then they won't get the credit they're due. It'll be, well, the other teams this is a weak year for college football. But yeah, I don't know. And so I look at it that way, and the idea of bumping out Florida State was ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest, the last 3, Baylor, TCU, Ohio State was a crapshoot, I think, for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Had Ohio State won 35-0, do you think they're in the game?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you can, you put 35 points. Now, I mean, you could probably whittle that down to, well, if they won 13-0 would have been the same. And no, I don't think so. But when you can beat a Wisconsin team that, and say what you want about the Big Ten, Wisconsin was top 5 in defense in the country, and Ohio State with their third string quarterback hung 59 points on you. And I think there was one of those that were defensive touchdowns, maybe 2, and defense had a lot to do with it. But, Ohio State did everything they needed to in a high-profile game, which is what they've struggled with over the last 5-6 years, is when they have the national spotlight on them, they completely fall apart. But they did what they needed to in a high-profile game with Gus Johnson yelling at them all the way on TV.
Yeah. And
that's exactly what they needed. And it was so convincing that everybody who mentioned this started turning towards Ohio State, well, except for Mark May, but most everybody else turned toward Ohio State and said, absolutely, this team deserves to be in the top 4 spot. Without, I don't know that they took seriously into account what Baylor and TCU did, and I think that the Big 12, the way that they're set up right now and the way they sort of mucked up their last week, I think contributed heavily to that. I think it was Ohio State doing what they needed to do, but I think if the Big 12 hadn't tried and slip in a co-champion thing at the last minute,
right,
and had a conference championship game, which you can't have unless there's 12 teams in the conference, I understand that. But if you wouldn't have tried this co-champion stuff and just let the conference stand on its own, I think that they would have had a better shot at getting either Baylor or TCU in than just saying, well, we'll have co-champions and that way TCU will be a co-champion and they'll be in the top 4 and we'll still have somebody in. I think the Big 12 shot themselves in the foot, and I think that's really one of the things that really helped Ohio State.
Now, I find it interesting, you like when you say Wisconsin's the number 5 defense in the country. Well, that's based off who they play, because Marshall's the number 2 offense in the country.
Right.
Do we really believe that Marshall is the second best offense in the country?
Ask
the
Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky.
Well, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of where my mind went initially, which is when everybody said, they played the number, they put 59 points up on the number 5 defense in the country. It's like, well, I mean, LSU's probably got a better defense than Wisconsin. Yeah, LSU's like 19th. Like does that make sense? Like I just like that's part of where my mind went initially, which was, well, was it that? I mean, okay, 59-0 over anybody's really incredible. 59-0 over Wisconsin is even better than incredible. So I'm not taking that away. Just when the argument is, well, they did that on the number 5 defense in the country, I'm going, well, if Ohio State would have played Marshall and held Marshall to 12 points or to 10 points, would they have said, wow, they held the number 2 offense in the country to 12 points? They probably wouldn't have. They probably would have said, oh, it's Marshall. But because it was Wisconsin across the front of the jersey,
right?
It looks a little different. Anyways, that's just.
But those are the numbers that they right, and I get your point. But those numbers they have to go with, and they use them in every facet of college football, because you look at some of the teams that are top 10 in anything. I mean, if I probably pulled up the top 10 offenses, you'd probably look at that list and go, really?
Yeah.
How does Conference USA have the top 3 or 4 offenses in the country? I don't know if they do, but just illustrating the point. But I mean, that's what you have to go on, and the whole system is predicated on you're playing these FBS schools, so there's a certain standard to uphold. I get all conferences are not the same. I understand that completely, but you kind of pick your metric in this sense. Like, okay, they beat a top 5 defense, or they beat a top 15 team, or they beat the number 2 team in their conference. I mean, however way you look at it, and as you said, beating anybody 59-0, especially Wisconsin in the championship game, is impressive.
Yeah, I mean, because I was just looking at that list, and even the top defense. Do you know who the top defense in the country is according to that list?
No.
Clemson.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So that's kind of, and I mean, in Florida State hung it on Clemson a little bit, and so. Does that make sense? I mean, they didn't really hang on Clemson, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, they turned it on Clemson at the end. Like, they didn't have an issue. And so I don't know. Penn State's the number 2 defense. Central Florida's number 3. Wisconsin actually jumped to number 4.
Is that in yards or points or what?
That's everything taken in together. This is their list. So that's yards, touchdowns, plays.
They combine them all and come up with a number or something?
They combine them all and come up with a ranking. This is NCAA.com.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. I got to go to that real quick.
Yeah. Louisville's number 6. Michigan State's number 7. LSU's 8. Florida's 9. Michigan is 10. Alabama is 11. So my question is, do you really think that Michigan's defense is better than Alabama's defense? I'm just trying to be real here on that. So I hate it when people say rankings of, they're the number 4, number 5 defense, and that's what I heard all week. Well, they hung it on the number 5 defense in the country. It was Wisconsin, and I loved it because I got to badger one of the Wisconsin fans in Ohio. I'm not going to mention his name, but I just sent him a quick private message that says, "Wow, Ohio State hung 59 points. # on Wisconsin."
I probably know who you sent that to as well.
Yeah,
but that's all right.
I didn't get a response. It was really interesting.
He's
decided not to reply.
Probably drinking milk out of a bag right now, or was at that point.
Chasing his Driggin on his Wiggin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big time deal there.
I'm sorry to all of you in Wisconsin.
Right. We are sorry for anyone that we've offended in Wisconsin. So anyway, so that moves on to the championship games. Florida State versus Oregon, Alabama versus Ohio State, which I think are two outstanding matchups in what is essentially a national semifinal. Oregon and Florida State. I think the key to victory for Oregon is, get out on top of Florida State early, use that first half where they don't show up and don't play football. And I think you've got to hang, I think you got to put 3 or 4 touchdowns up on Florida State and shut them down, I think, to really have a chance, because Florida State's going to come on in the end, and it's kind of, can you survive that second half flurry that they're known for now?
And part of me wonders if they were holding back this year. And knowing that they do play in a weaker conference, the ACC is a weak conference. I mean, I liken the ACC to the Big Ten, and that probably pisses you off, but that's just where I sit, and that's just what I do. So, I think they knew they could hang out and they could win all their games. That's just what I think. But what happens if Florida State decides they're going to play second half ball in the first half and the second half? I mean, that's just, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe I'm sitting here and what they are is what they are. But
right.
I mean, what if that happens? They show up that first game against Oregon and they go 56-28 on them. What's everybody going to think then?
Well, I mean, it's just
stand there and you're wrong. Listen, be wrong and get used to it.
Yeah, that's what I would say to that. So I don't know that Florida State's been holding back. I just don't. And it's entirely possible they get to the national semifinal game and they start putting the wood to Oregon. I mean, that's entirely possible, and I think you can do that without saying that they were holding back all this year or anything like that. Now, I would go as far as saying that there's probably some stuff that they have kept in the back pocket for a national championship run or something like that, and teams are known to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Jimbo Fisher will have his kids out and prepared. I mean, I didn't give him much chance against Auburn last year, and they ended up beating Auburn. So, and I'm certainly not an SEC fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I figured Auburn would win that game, and Florida State took care of them. So, and I think you're going to be hard pressed to pick against Florida State until it's all zeros on the clock and they're trailing. I don't know how you pick against Florida State.
Man, I'm excited to see that game, though. I tell you what, that's going to be a great game. And I think the Alabama-Ohio State game is going to be a great game as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't pick against Florida State. So if we're going to pick national champions, I'm picking Florida State. Who are you taking?
Are we doing like each game and then national champion, or?
Yeah, let's go each game. Let's jump over. I picked Florida State, and I'll just be honest, I'm taking Florida State all the way. Okay. But let's jump over to the Alabama Ohio State game.
Okay, you'll take FSU over Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Oh gosh, I'm gonna pick Florida State too.
Okay,
it's like Mariota's gonna be coming off the Heisman win, and he's won everything else. We'll get to that in a second.
And he's gonna be on that banquet trip, dude, putting on 22 pounds.
Right? Yeah.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And
is that an NCAA infraction, by the way?
No, because the NCAA is throwing it on.
Is he allowed? But I'm saying, is he allowed to have 2 scoops of mashed potatoes, or is it only 1?
Yeah, 2, but 3 would be a something from a donor, so you can't.
3's an extra snack, right?
Right, 3's an extra snack. Yeah, 3 is an illegal donation, so you can only have 2.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and the extra pound of bread is also considered an additional scholarship thing or something like that, so they can't get in. So, okay, so we both picked Florida State over Oregon. All right, so Ohio State, Alabama. Who you got? Do I need to ask? Yeah, I know you have Alabama.
I got Alabama.
And
I don't trust Ohio State in anything. They're going to have to win like 3 national titles to undo what Florida did to them, in my mind. I know it's been
how little sense that makes.
3 classes since then, but I'm just saying,
You realize Florida only beat them once, right? You know that only happened 1 year in one game?
Yeah. I mean, that was like, hey, let's go out to the woodshed. I got something to show you.
Oh, my gosh.
It was awful.
And you know what coach engineered that beating?
Doesn't matter.
Urban Meyer.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll see. Of course, I'm picking Ohio State. I mean, was that
Homer?
I will say this. If the Ohio State team that showed up against Wisconsin shows up against Alabama,
it'll be a close game.
No, it won't be a close game. It won't be a close game. If it's the Ohio State team that I've seen throughout most of the season, it'll be an Alabama blowout.
Okay.
I will tell you that, because we cannot afford to screw around for 3 quarters. I know this sounds like I'm talking about Florida State, but to experiment with things on offense and screw around on defense and let the team hang around or come back and win. If we play like we played against Penn State or Minnesota or Virginia Tech of all things, we'll get blown out of the building, and it won't even be close. And Nick Saban will be mildly amused all the way to the bank, because I don't think he ever gets happy.
Alabama,
right? Row Tide, row. All right. So, but I'll pick Ohio State. You pick Alabama, and then you kind of said Florida State all the way.
Yeah.
So you'll take Florida State over Alabama. I don't know it. If it's Florida State,
you can pick your team if you want. It's fine.
If it's Florida State, well, of course I am. If it's Florida State, if it's Florida State against,
my headphones fell off. That was so good.
If it's Florida State versus Ohio State, okay, it's essentially the national championship of the two teams no one wanted. Very few people wanted Ohio State to make the final spot. And people have picked against Florida State, not according to the odds, because this is the first time I think in 30 games I think I read or saw where Florida State's an underdog going up against Oregon. So it's like the team that no one wanted versus the team that no one believes in. And it's Florida State versus Ohio State. And I don't know. I'll pick Ohio State because I kind of have to. I'll take off my impartial journalist for a minute and I'll pick Ohio State. But I think that going into the national title game with a third-string quarterback with 2 games under his belt, no matter how great the rest of your team is, I think that's a tall order to go up against a team that will have at that point won 30 straight games and is defending national champion. I think that's too much for a well-rounded team with a third-string quarterback to overcome.
Okay.
So rationally, I'm going to pick Florida State, but my heart says Ohio State. So you do
your
with that.
Pick is
Ohio State.
Okay.
I'll say Ohio State.
Just making sure. Okay,
but I've laid out the reasons why Florida State would win that game.
Man, that's good.
How's that for politics?
I appreciate that you analyzed it and then you decided against what the facts would show.
Right.
I think it's really great.
That's a life lesson right there. Analyze it, and then when the facts tell you one thing, you go in the opposite direction, because that's what people do.
Man, this is kind of off the beaten, like off the subject, but Florida State's got the 41st overall offense according to NCAA.com.
Okay.
East Carolina is the 5th best offense, and Western Kentucky is the 6th best offense, and Washington State is the 7th best offense. So, like,
go Pirates, Hilltoppers, and Cougars! All right.
So, anyways, I'm sorry. I just had to say that because I was sitting there looking at that, and it was bothering me. And so now that I've got that out in the open, I really appreciate your accountability.
Next week, right? Yeah, no, I'll pray for you. Next week on PK and Perry, we'll talk about how Tyler thinks all the rankings are stupid.
I think all the rankings are dumb. They're just dumb.
What was it? Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember this story I did. This has been years ago, but at one point, Kent State had one of the top 10 defenses in the country.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying.
We got so much mileage out of that. It was ridiculous. Well, I don't know who played for us defensively. Josh Cribbs was our quarterback who played for the Browns for so long. Yeah. And that was when we were actually a fairly decent team after 20, 30 years of just being just awful. And for like a week, we had the top 10 defense in the country, and then we played Ohio State, and Ohio State hung 52 on us. So it's a thing for Ohio State to hang 50-plus points on top 10 defenses, apparently.
Yeah. It's really great, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it.
Man,
So
Toledo's kicking butt too. I mean, they've got one of the highest ranked offenses as well.
where are they?
They're at 18, but they're ahead of Oklahoma, UCLA, Georgia Tech, Wisconsin. I don't know. I'm Georgia,
Well, hey,
USC,
the
Texas.
the MAC is a powerhouse.
Really good. Colorado State is at 12. It makes a lot of sense. So
You don't mess with those Rams.
we should probably get off that. But I'm just being honest. Like, I don't know. It all bothers me.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, moving on from a bunch of numbers to the one that's going to change. Number 2 to number 1, that's where Johnny Football is finally going in the depth chart after weeks and weeks and weeks. And Manziel, after Brian Hoyer has been ineffective for the last 4 games after almost being the Browns' savior. I'm not exactly sure how that just kind of fell apart, but after these last few weeks, it's going to be Johnny Manziel now starting for the Cleveland Browns. This is kind of the situation we envisioned when Manziel got drafted back in April.
Yep.
And now, now here we are. The future is now. And Manziel is another one of those guys that has been, hyped up a lot just because of who he is and the high profile couple seasons he had with Texas A&M. And now here he is. And, as a Browns fan, what's your feeling on this? You're moving from a guy with NFL experience. He hasn't been effective here in the last couple of games, but he's gotten you to a point where you're in the hunt for a playoff spot, which no one thought you guys were going to be at this point in the season, to a rookie who's very untested. What do you think?
I'm glad we get to find out what he is at this point. Like, we might be able to see, he's had almost a full season to sit and learn, be it behind an interception machine, but still learn. And that's honest. And we'll get to see kind of what he's got, at least a few games worth. So, I mean, Hoyer's not returning in a Browns uniform. His contract's at the end of the season. When you throw 11 picks in 4 games, and no touchdowns, it's like, come on, dude. Seriously?
Right.
Like, your job is on the line. Like, try to make smart decisions. Like,
Yep.
I'm in your corner, but I kind of want to see what Johnny Manziel can do now. I think he might be able to provide some sort of spark. We talked about this before the show, that if Rex Grossman just didn't throw picks and fumble the ball and turn the ball over, that the Bears were going to win their game because of that awesome defense they had that year they went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Same thing with the Browns. We have a great defense. If you can just keep the ball in your possession, we will win the game. It's really simple. Like, we will win the games. So, I'm excited to see him, I think, a little bit and just kind of know what we have. Man, I was pulling for Hoyer, but I don't know how you make that many dumb mistakes. Like, take the sack sometimes. Don't just chuck it up.
Right.
Or if you're going to chuck it up far enough out of bounds that nobody can catch it in bounds. Like, stop. And
Yeah.
And then when you throw the picks and they talk to you about the picks, don't blame your receivers. They may have run the wrong routes, but it's on you.
Right.
You need to know where they're going to be. And so that was the thing that bothered me. What about that interception you threw in the end zone to Jordan Cameron? Hey, well, Cameron was supposed to run down underneath and he didn't. No, you threw the ball. You threw the pick. You should have seen it was tight coverage. Don't try to squeeze it in. That's all I've got on that. I'm excited to see him, but we'll see what happens. I hope he does the money signs, and I hope he gets hit really hard, and then I hope he gets back up and does it again. So,
Right. There's a story that Manziel and I imagine various members of the Browns coaching staff are pretty much expecting anyone who sacks Manziel or hits him or anything this season is going to get up and do the money sign. So I think they're almost kind of preparing for that, which will be funny the first couple times it happens, but if everybody does it every time he gets sacked or tackled, it's really going to get old quick. But, yeah. I know. I mean, it's one of those things where with Cleveland, it looks right. There you go. With Cleveland, it looks really good until it just turns into a dumpster fire. And you've had that with Hoyer.
It's always a dumpster fire.
Hoyer looked really good earlier in the season. Good as in, maybe we didn't need to draft Manziel. And then after that, last quarter of this season, he has just absolutely fallen apart. He's I know how much you love stats now. So he's a 76.3 rated quarterback. That's 31st in the league. In fact, there's some guys that have come in as backups and are doing better than him. Most of the Washington Redskins quarterbacks are higher rated than Brian Hoyer at this point.
We used to have one of them.
Yeah, you did. As a matter of fact, is he one of them that's
He probably is.
up
He's
there?
been playing well.
Right. I don't know, see, but anyway, so yeah, most of the quarterbacks of the Redskins and the Cardinals have gone through or are higher. Kirk Cousins, 86. Mark Sanchez is an 88. So that gives you an idea. That gives you an idea. But so,
Man,
I mean,
Hoyer butt fumbles in front of you.
so I mean, at this point, why not Manziel? I mean, you guys still have a legitimate shot at the playoffs. You got a better shot than the Bears do at this point. So, I mean, you've established that Hoyer's not going to get you there. Hoyer's got you to this point. So he's not going to get you the rest of the way. You don't know that Manziel will, but you drafted him for that. So I think you're spot on when you say it's best to find out now. Let's see what we have. What have we invested our franchise in, and see if this is a guy that's going to be capable of taking us to the next level, or if we're shopping for another quarterback in 3 years.
And all I can think about is if we were in the NFC South, we would have clinched playoff positioning right now.
Right. Well, I think there's quite a few teams that have had that thought, namely Chicago. Well, I don't know. Will we be tops in the NFC South? We'd be tied for first in the NFC South.
It's like we won the division, and we're picking 8th. Like, ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I hate it. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We need to see what we've got, and maybe he can bring a spark, and who knows? I mean, you know how skeptical I've been. I'm a fairly skeptical person, so you know how
Yep, I know.
I'm struggling.
You guys have Cincinnati this week.
Yep, that's a win. I'm calling it.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that usually when the backup guys come in, it usually provides a spark. You know, when RG3 got injured and or benched, I can't keep track anymore. It keeps happening. And Kirk Cousins came in. Cousins did a nice job. And then Colt McCoy came in, and he did a nice job. So it's kind of that backup quarterback spark that these teams get. And then, you know, does it continue? And that'll be the thing for Manziel is, you know, you guys are probably going to beat Cincinnati. And that's your last home game. And then you're on the road against Carolina and Baltimore. And you're going to have to, I'd say you're going to have to win 2 of those 3 to have a legitimate playoff shot.
Well, I don't think we get in unless we have 10 wins. So we've got to win out.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know.
You'll help with Cincinnati. I mean, if you beat them, they've got that stupid tie on their record that usually just fouls things up. And then Baltimore. So I mean, I think you definitely have to beat Baltimore and Cincinnati.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, I think you're helped out if you go 10-6. If you run the table, that increases your odds even more. But
yes.
you've got to win the games in your conference, in your division.
Yeah,
you absolutely have to.
And I think it's possible because our defense is good. But we'll just see what happens. Who knows? Maybe Johnny will come in and be, you know, Joe Montana.
Maybe.
We can hope springs eternal in Cleveland. We can hope, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of hope. It's probably the first and only time you'll hear Manziel compared to Joe Montana.
He's probably compared more regularly to like Wilt Chamberlain than he is to Joe Montana for other reasons.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. This is probably a thing for another show, but I am not a fan of the running quarterback.
Okay.
We can get into another show. I could spend 10 minutes on that. I'm just not a fan of these scrambling guys.
I don't disagree with you, but yeah.
Right. I'm okay with a guy that can throw the ball, make good decisions, and then if he has to take off and run, he can, and he has that ability. But the guys that, he's so fast and he's got so much speed and acceleration, and you know, every once in a while he can throw the ball in the direction it has to go. I just don't think they're good quarterbacks long term. And I think Manziel's one of those guys. That's why I brought that up. I've never seen anything in him that says, yeah, that's a really good quarterback. I've seen him make some really impressive throws, but I've seen him make some really dumb decisions. And I've been a Bears and Buckeyes fan long enough to know that quarterbacks that make dumb decisions simply do not last.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
It's so true. I mean, it's so true. Michael Vick hasn't played a full season except, one time. I mean, it's just he can't do it, and that's because they're just if you're that quick and you're that small, then you can't take the hits that they can take, and so they're not built like running backs who can just endure it for 10 years.
Yeah.
No,
Vic's got more rib problems than Adam, so I mean he can't stay healthy for any long period of time. When was the last time Vic had a? Has he had a full healthy season since he got out of the pokey for dogfighting?
I don't think so. I know he had a really great year at Philadelphia.
Okay.
I think they went 12-4 that year.
Was that the year he came in for McNabb?
I think so. Let me pull that up. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the year that he did that. And then the following year, they were the Dream Team.
Yeah, was it 6-10?
Yeah, that didn't work out too well, but that's because Vince Young called them the Dream Team, so kind of
right.
He kind of did that to him.
And Vince Young hasn't done much since.
And you would have thought that they were the Dream Team hearing that. To be honest, I mean, I remember when they signed all of those guys in the offseason, they were coming in off an amazing year. He hasn't played 16 games since 2006. 2010, he had 2010 he played 12 games. 2011 he played 13. 2012 10. There's 13 7.
So 2009. So that was with the Falcons. That was before Bad News Kennels. So yeah, not since he came back.
That was right around Bad News Kennels. It happened, and then he left the league for 3 years.
Yeah.
Once played baseball like Michael Jordan.
Right. Yeah. Served his time with paid his debt to society.
Yeah.
So there you go. But I mean that just reinforces my point that once these guys, if they don't have that quickness anymore, because I saw Michael Vick run early in his career and it was ridiculous. Like he would scramble, and if he had a seam, he was gone. But not anymore.
Oh, well, no, heck no. But he used to. I mean, his 40 time is ridiculous. I remember coming into the draft, like they were talking about his 40 time. I'm trying to find it. His 4.25 was his 40. 4.25. Like that is just unbelievable. But even today, I mean, like I guess last year he raced LaShawn McCoy at a 40-yard dash and beat him.
Wow.
And so he's just still able to beat his running back, and like. The guy is just, I mean, he's a freak of an athlete, but I mean, he can't stay healthy. So,
right. And, beating a fellow running back in a foot race is a whole lot different from scrambling for your life from JJ Watt.
Right. And rarely ever will you have a, 16 to 22 yard scramble, but quite frequently you'll throw a 16 to 22 yard pass. So I'd rather you stay in the pocket and stay healthy.
Right. Right. Or at least be able to buy some time in the pocket and make those throws.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady has made a living, and Peyton Manning has made a living out of not being mobile.
Yeah, exactly.
And just hitting their guys.
And those are both guys who, if they had to rely on their footwork to get them out of trouble, they'd be in trouble. They'd be dead meat because neither one of them. I think you and I could both beat them in a 40. And
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's like I hope I could beat those guys in a 40, especially Peyton.
Yeah.
Don't know why I just picked on him just now. But those are guys that make good decisions, have good arms, and really know what they're doing when they're out there. And those are the quarterbacks that I think are the best.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll see what happens with Manziel. I mean, I hope he is that for the Browns, and they can stop getting out of drafting quarterbacks and actually build a team that can make a significant run. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think it'd be awesome.
So, all right. Well, hey, as we go to wrap this one up real quick, thoughts on the Heisman. That's going to be coming out this week. Mariota's already won every award that a quarterback can possibly win. I don't think there's any reason he's not going to add the Heisman to that on Saturday. What do you think?
I think it's his to lose. I mean, as long as he doesn't go sign a bunch of autographs or do something ridiculous off the field, he's going to win it. You can't go against him. He's been the best player in college football without question.
Yeah. I think Mariota wins the Heisman, and he might become Chip Kelly's new quarterback. We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
That might be what Chip Kelly's going for anyway. So, All right, well, hey, that's going to wrap it up for us here today. Thanks for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter, PK and Perry. Email us at pkperry@hotmail.com, and that's going to do it for this edition of the show, and we will see you next time. A little under 40 minutes with all
that's
that.
pretty good.
So, yeah.
Sorry about that last 6 minutes. I got really angry about the Browns, and I didn't want to express it on the mic.
That's okay.
So I just went quiet.
Yeah.
Man, I got really upset. I was like, what is their deal?
What is wrong with you guys? Yeah. So, hey, I get it. I've wanted to uncork on the Bears numerous times and haven't really done it. So there you go.
Yeah. Did you see the story about J.T. Barrett?
I might have. It was one of the, probably I didn't click on it. Was it something his girlfriend
allegedly abused his girlfriend? 911 calls were made.
Oh, yeah. I didn't click on it or read it, but I had heard about it.
They had said, so now there's everybody who, I think more or less I'm playing a character that I hate Ohio State more than I do. I don't hate Ohio State. I just don't trust Ohio State. Right. There are people that are like, well, that's Urban Meyer. He recruits bad kids. I was like, well, let's find out before we just go down that road.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. There are very few coaches. I don't know if there are any coaches, honestly, that look at every kid they recruit and just expect them to be, choir boys. I mean, I think that's
right.
I think that's unrealistic. Now, can we try and recruit guys that don't beat their girlfriends? Yeah. I mean, I think that's an attainable goal, but at the same time, I mean, there's kids that they're from decent families and they're raised up to be decent human beings, and they go to college and they become stupid. I mean, we've seen that from kids in this area. Yeah.
I love reading the comments on these pages.
Oh, God.
So this one lady says, a guy in a full leg, she's an Ohio State fan, a guy in a full leg cast picks up a girl and throws her across the room. That doesn't even sound plausible. And this guy says, especially in Ohio, where most of the women are very fat and overweight. This next guy down says, Randall Lowe says that. Well, he's the guy from West Virginia. Isn't it legal to marry your cousin there? It's just amazing. It's just intelligence just oozing from this thread. Just all over the place.
To say the least. I'm pulling up. Oh, I pulled it up on Deadspin. I'm sure that's a reliable source. Let's see.
Mine's on ESPN. So.
Oh, you're on ESPN. Argument started. Barrett asked, wait, what? His girlfriend is Alexandria Barrett Clark?
That's weird.
So, are they married, or did he just start dating someone with almost the same last name as him?
His girlfriend is also known as his half-sister.
Oh, gosh. Combs dispatches 911 calls from Barrett and Barrett Clark. Barrett says to calls to say his ex-girlfriend won't leave his place. Barrett Clark says Barrett choked her and threw her across the room. Barrett Clark tells the dispatcher that she's pregnant. Is she gunning for child support or something? Good Lord.
Are we still alive?
Yeah.
Okay. Oops.
I know. I'm just like, look, that's a lot of information in a short period of time. Oh, well.